Welcome to My Life Chassidus Applied, episode 248. This program is dedicated in loving memory of Betzalel Jacobson by his son Yerachmiel Jacobson and family, and in loving memory of Shai Gansberg by his family. Both yahrzeits are on Zayin Adar this week. The yahrzeit and birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu. So we'll begin, as we always do, with something related to the time in which we are in, which is Zayin Adar this week, on Tuesday, as well as Parsha Tetzaveh. Now, of course, this year is a Iber Yar, a Shana Muberes, a leap year, with an additional month of Adar. So we have an Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni. So we're now in the beginnings of the first Adar, and we honor the yahrzeit of Zayin Adar and Adar Rishon. There's a reason Purim is in the second Adar. The Gemara asked the question, which Adar, when it's a Shana Muberes, when it's a leap year, in which Adar should we celebrate Purim? And there's a special learning because Mismach Geula LeGeula, so you want to connect, and that from 1 month, Mismach, to make close, to associate the redemption of Nisan, of Pesach in Nisan, to redemption of Purim. So therefore you make it in the second Adar, which is closer to Nisan. But in general, the Adar Rishon is the one that most things we honor in that month, except of course if a person is born in Adar Sheni, in Iber Yar, so obviously his birthday is then, or Adar Rishon, then of course it's an Adar Rishon. So it's Zayin Adar this week, as well as Parsha Tetzaveh. So let's speak about that for a moment. It's always good to begin with Divrei Torah, Leben mit der Zeit, living with the time, because that's what gives us strength. Torah is Chayenu ve'erechimenu, our life and our sustenance. Hashem eiz l'amei yitein, God gives. Eiz is strength and power. So the strength and power to deal with all the challenges in life, with the difficulties, including different setbacks and even tragedies, as we shall talk about, sadly, comes from Torah. So it's always good to Peschim B'dvar Malchus, to begin with Torah. It ties us above and gives us the strength to endure and thrive, even, through any type of situation. So Zayin Adar, of course, as I said, is the birthday and the yahrzeit of Moshe Rabbeinu. Certain tzaddikim, Mamalash Neseim, the Eibishter fulfills their years, that they pass away exactly the day they were born. By the Rabbeim, the Mittler Rebbe was that way, Tes Kislev. It shows on a complete cycle. Here's not the place to go into discussing what about so many other, most tzaddikim, it's not that way. The Rebbe explains it in a number of places. So regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, lived 120 years, which is also the complete cycle of life, after the Mabul. So you see, Moshe Rabbeinu was an individual who was lived in this world, was a Dugma Lamaila, Ish Alakim. He was a living example, personified what it means to be a divine human being, meaning a human being that's completely aligned to what God wants him to be. And he was the closest to perfection. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, because we're still living in Golus and Mashiach is not here, and Moshe Rabbeinu, when the end of his life, was not a perfect world yet, and that's why he did not go into Israel, Israel, along with his generation, except for Kolov and Yeshua. But nevertheless, we learned that Moshe Rabbeinu achieved, of the 50 gates of Bina, Nun Shari Bina, Chamishim Shari Bina, that God created, Moshe reached 49 of them. And on the day of his passing, the day of his Istalkus, as the Maggid explains, Har Nevoi, Nevoi is the mountain where Moshe went up, and that was his final place. Nevoi is the letters Nun Boy, 50 within it, because that's when he reached the 50th gate. What is the lesson to us? So there's a whole chapter in Tanya, Perek Membeis, that says that even though Moshe Rabbeinu, no one can compare to him, but we have a Moshe within each one of us. And that's why Moshe was able to say, At Yisrael, Ma Hashem Elkecha Shel Miyimach. Now, Israel, what is God already asking of you? All he is asking, Yiras Hashem Elkecha, to fear him, to have awe for him. So the Alter Rebbe says, the Gemara says rather, Yira otu milsa zitrasi. Yira for God is a small thing. That Moshe is saying, like, what's he already asking of you? It's no big thing. So the Gemara answers, yeah. For Moshe Rabbeinu, it's taka milsa zutrasa. So the Alter Rebbe has the question, but that's Moshe Rabbeinu. The point is that Moshe said it to the Klal Yisrael, to all the Jews. So he answers, because in each one of us is a Moshe, and compared to the Moshe, it's something each of us can achieve. This teaches us immediately that everything that happened to Moshe in his lifetime, the whole Chumash, we all have a me'ein, bedakus, in some subtle, microcosmic way, we have a form of that. Because Moshe is, of course, the first Rebbe, a neshama klolis, Moshe Rabbeinu. And as a Rebbe, we each have a piece of that within us. So Zayin Adar, the day that he was born and the day that it's nostalgic, both relate to us. Now we know what the Alter Rebbe writes in the Geras HaKedesh, the day of Neshama goes back to its source. So it's the day when all his work comes together. So that's why it's explained in Sforim, and it's cited in a number of places, the Rebbe cites it, that's why the only parsha in the Torah where Moshe's name is not mentioned after he was born, of course, in Parsha Shmos, is Parsha Tetzaveh, this week's Parsha. Why is his name not mentioned? So some commentaries say because it's a reminder, it's an honoring that this day Moshe was missing. So his name is not mentioned. So even though it was Moshe, so it says Ata Tetzaveh, you, doesn't say Moshe. But the deeper, to say that it's only a negative, just to remind us of the sadness of Moshe's missing, so to speak, his name is no longer there, the Rebbe explains, based on other places, that Moshe's name is not mentioned, but the etzem of Moshe is definitely referred to. V'ata, ata, when you say ata, like ata hares ladas, on the Eibishter you're referring to ata, lashon nechach, like you're speaking to him directly, you're not talking about his name. So there's a level in godliness where we say that he's beyond any name, as it is with each of us. Our name definitely connects to our core, but it's not the core. So on Zayin Adar, both the birth of Moshe and the istalkus of Moshe, the core of Moshe Rabbeinu is revealed. And what happened on the Zayin Adar? We read the end of Chumash, that Moshe Rabbeinu sacrificed his life for the Jewish people. And the last verse, for all the signs and wonders that Moshe did before the eyes of Israel. And Rashi says, what did he do? He broke the tablets. And the Eibishter said, thank you for breaking them. The classic sikh, one of the most moving and powerful sikhs of the Rebbe, Simchas Torah Tavshim Mem Zayin, that he dissected this Rashi with tears in his eyes, explained it. Very rare to see on Simchas Torah. I remember it vividly like today. Unbelievable sikh. Where the Rebbe has the question, what kind of, the breaking of the tablets is a day we fast for, the 17th of Tammuz, Shavuos B'Tammuz. It's considered a tragic day. And not only is that God is saying thank you for it. And Rashi could not find any other great things that Moshe Rabbeinu did. The Makis in Egypt, the Yitzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, Matan Torah, the building of the Mishkan, all the wonders that happened throughout the 40 years that they traveled in the wilderness. Of all things, breaking the tablets. Bekitz and Nimritz, the Rebbe explained, yes, because all other things are great things. But if you really want to see the etzem, the va'ata, the etzem of Moshe Rabbeinu, you know where you see it? In the breaking of the tablets. Because he sacrificed the most sacred thing of all. Not just the Sefer Torah. The tablets. And which tablets? The first tablets that God himself engraved and God himself presented. Why? As Rashi says in another place, because he wanted to tear up the ksubah, the contract. The Jews had sinned and they were culpable and responsible. But they did not yet receive the tablets. By breaking the tablets, Moshe was basically saying, yes, they heard it, that you should not have false gods, but they did not sign it. He was preparing a defense of the Jewish people. His love was so great, he was ready to sacrifice the Torah itself, the holiest, the luchas. And himself, like he said, erase my name from the Sefer, which is why he doesn't say his name at Tetzaveh, to remind us of that Mesiras Nefesh. Of a Rebbe, of a Moshe Rabbeinu, ready to give not just away his physical life, his spiritual life, his connection to Torah, erase my name from your book, from your holy book. This is God's Sefer, it's not just some book. And yet that's what a Rebbe does, that's what a Moshe Rabbeinu does. And that's what we connect to on Zayin Adar, the etzem of Moshe. And just as the Moshe in his time is Pashtusa, the Moshe b'chol dara v'dara, every generation has a Moshe, the Moshe of our generation, our Rebbe, which is an extension of that Moshe, and the Moshe within each one of us. So it teaches us, and this week we have the power to connect to the core level that's beyond Giluyim, beyond revelation, beyond what our senses can experience, the core touching the core of the Moshe within each of us, receiving the energy from the Moshe of the generation, receiving the energy from the Moshe Klolis of all generations. That's a lesson. What does it in personal terms it means? It means no matter what happens in your life, and we all have our ups and downs, there's a core pilot flame always burning. Ani yeshena v'li be'er. I may be asleep, or I am asleep. My heart is awake. So we all have that core essential part within us. And that is what Pasha Tetzaveh and Zayin Adar remind us. That when you hold on to that core, you can get through any situation because that core is not subject to Helam and Gili, to revelation or concealment, because it's a core, it's an etzem. Etzem, bilti mizgala, bilti mishtana, is not subject to these changes. Now, of course, we don't just want the etzem, we want Moshe in a revealed way. We want the Rebbe in a revealed way. We want it in a way that we can tangibly and palpably relate to it. However, it's a great consolation, a great strength, knowing that that core remains with us. And it's our work that we need to do, ma'azare b'chaim, that we need to live according to the guidelines of Moshe Rabbeinu and of the Moshe of our generation, and that brings them alive in the physical sense, and ultimately, with Mashiach's coming, in the most physical sense, in the full reunion and the full integration of matter and spirit, as will happen in that time. So that's a lesson among other lessons. I want to cross-reference two other episodes where I spoke about this topic, episodes 57, 103, 153, and 202. These episodes are all time-stamped, so when you go look at meaningfullife.com/mylife, you can just go to the YouTube version and you'll find exactly the section you're looking for. Many people ask me for that, so I keep reminding you that's what you can do. Before I continue to the questions, I want to announce that this Tuesday night is the deadline, midnight, New York time, of the 5th annual My Life Chassidus Applied Essay Contest. Essays have been coming in, but you still have till Tuesday night. So please use this opportunity, share it with others. It'll probably be the greatest year of all, both the amount of essays and the different places they're coming from, students. Everybody has an equal chance to win. I assure you that. The rules are made specifically in a way that are not exclusive only for the best writers or only for the people who understand Chassidus best, but someone who follows those guidelines of applying an idea to a real-life situation, to a real-life challenge, is the key. Follow the guidelines. Make sure you go through the checklist of everything that's required, because that's how the papers are marked. So, good luck. It should be B'atzlacha Rabbe, and what better time as we are beginning in the month of Adar, as we move to Adar, into Nisan, into Adar Sheni, and then into Nisan, and we'll be judging and we'll give you updates as we go. Mishanichnas Adar marbim b'simcha. When we enter Adar, we increase in simcha. So here's a question that literally came in today, and sadly, I'd rather not talk about it, but how could you not? And I'm going to read it exactly as the writer writes it, and I feel that he captures the sentiment of many, many. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, has Hashem gotten confused between Adar and Av? In the 5 short days of Adar, Rabbi Chiel Eckstein, a leader in Jewish philanthropy, had a massive heart attack at 67 and passed away. A 19-year-old girl was brutally violated and murdered in Jerusalem. A young man, Moshe Deitch, passed away. And there was a horrific bus crash in Israel, killing 2 sisters and injuring 41. What the heck is going on? Uncensored question. The Frierdiker Rebbe says a number of places that they're just difficult to speak, but it's even more difficult to remain silent. So I take that cue, being that this is a forum that many people listen to, and being that it is trying to the best of my ability to convey in an authentic way and with a true integrity, full integrity, of the Rebbe and the Rabbeim's spirit and words and wishes, what we need to do is gather together. This is the times where we strengthen each other and we hold on for our dear life to Eitz Chaim Hi L'Machzikim Ba, to the tree of life, which is the Torah. Torah in general, from Moshe Rabbeinu, especially being that this week is Yom Haledes and Yom Histalkus. And Torah includes the Torah of all the generations, and particularly the Torah of the Rabbeim, close to us, and the Rebbe. This is what gives us strength. Does it give us answers? Not necessarily. We don't know God's mysterious ways, and that's the best answer. To try to explain things, to try to justify, is actually cruel and insensitive. What we have to do is what the Rambam says in the beginning of Hilchos Tainiyos, that it's also cruel and insensitive to see it as just an accident. So we don't have to find answers. We don't, God forbid, to see it as an accident. We have to use this as an opportunity of introspection, where we stand in our own Avos and Achdus Yisrael, where we stand in our own personal relationship with God. It's not about pointing fingers. Each of us has to look inside ourselves. Obviously, we have to do everything possible to help console and strengthen and be there with the people who are grieving. But the greatest thing we always do, we take the grief and we turn it into a positive energy, an additional mitzvah, additional learning Torah, additional tzedakah, additional prayer, tefillah, Torah, Vedic, Milas, Chasadim, upon the three pillars upon which the entire world rests and upon which each individual microcosm, each of us is a universe, a microcosm, rests. This is the way we do it. Do we fully understand how it gives us strength? Not necessarily, but it gives strength. And this is how we endure, and this is how we march forward. As I said earlier, when we hold on to Torah, and Pnimis HaTorah, Chassidus, which is the inner soul, and the Etzem HaTorah, sometimes it's called the Etzem, like Moshe Rabbeinu has a Etzem, the Torah has a Etzem. And it all connects to Raisa V'Kutshabrichu V'Yisrael, Yisrael Raisa V'Kutshabrichu Kul Echad. Israel, Torah, and God are all one. On that core level, this is what allows us to transcend even the harshest, and to get through it, and to be stronger. And in some way that provides the answer, because we get stronger through it. We don't get demoralized, we don't get weakened, we don't withdraw or retreat. We use it as a catalyst for greater growth. That's the healthy and the truest way to address all these things. When it comes in the beginning of Adar, which is supposed to be a time of joy, that only magnifies and amplifies the quandary, but it's still that means that we have an opportunity to add in joy. Joy is not a contradiction to tragedy. What that means is that sometimes we have to celebrate through tears. What are we celebrating? Not the tragedy, obviously. We're celebrating that we are here and we're connected. The soul lives on. And we will do whatever is possible to continue the legacy and perpetuate the legacy of that neshama. So there's something to celebrate in that sense. You don't celebrate, obviously, with the halachic guidelines of how one celebrates when there's a tragedy, but simcha does not just mean dancing and saying l'chaim. Simcha is a simcha sachaim, is an inner joy, even an inner celebration of life itself, and that we have the opportunity to do whatever we can to eradicate, that to the point where there no longer will be a moch Hashem ma'al kol ponim, that eradicate and erase, that there'll no longer be a tear on any face when Mashiach comes, the Gula Mitis Vashlema, and we're reunited with all our loved ones. So that's what this time is. I cannot go and explain exactly what all this means. As I said, this is the time-tested and true and time-tested way that we've been taught, and we follow what we've been taught. I will say that being a Shana Muberes, I mentioned this I think last week or the few weeks before this, is a year when the Rabbeim are always somewhat tentative, somewhat hesitant, somewhat paused, you can say, because a Shana Muberes does remind us of the wound of the moon when it was diminished, which is the whole reason why we make a leap year. Again, this is not coming to explain anything, it's just coming to teach us as well. But what does the leap year do? We don't just recognize the wound. We add an entire month where it becomes even a greater year, a longer year than a regular solar year. Suddenly the lunar year, because it has a 13th month, is stronger than ever. This this moon, which was wounded, Kama Lavona, Miyuta Lavona, diminishing, that diminishing adds and increases and adds an entire new dimension. And that's the lesson to each of us in times like this. And we have to take it to heart, and learn those lessons and how to grow in each of us in our own personal way. That's what we do. We don't just shriek, and we don't just grieve, and we don't just become hysterical. We take it and turn it into something positive. It may be difficult sometimes to do that, but that's exactly what we were trained and taught to do. Okay. I did speak about this topic. I feel a little awkward actually to mention other episodes, but I'll mention it anyway because it's not a technical thing for me. This is personal. But I do want to mention it because those that may need more information, I quote many sources. So in episodes 11, unfortunately, quite a few episodes, 11, 61, 83, 188, 222, 233, and 234, about the Pittsburgh tragedy a few months ago, and 244, I spoke about this as well. Take a long pause, and I want to mention, since I spoke about the leap year, so I should have mentioned this letter last week, but let me do it now. There's a letter, Purim Cotton Tovshin Nun Beis. So we're talking about Tetzaveh Adar Tovshin Nun Beis, just a little while before Chav Zayin Adar, when the Rebbe had the stroke. So it's a letter written to all the participants of an annual dinner, Congregation Levi Yitzchak Lubavitch in Hallandale, Florida. And the Rebbe speaks exactly what I spoke about last week, which was really taken from here, that leap year teaches us where the sun and the moon join together, the giver and the receiver. And I just wanted to make mention of this letter, Purim Cotton, on 5752. Again, Cotton, because it's other Rishon, so other Purim Cotton, Yaakov Cotton, David Cotton, Hamoyer Cotton, all these so-called small, but in that small, in that bittul, lies the greatest strengths. Okay, if anybody wants a copy of this letter, just email us. You can do this at the anonymous forum, but please add your email and say, please send me the letter about the leap year, and give us your email address, and we'll be happy to send it to you. That's meaningfullife.com/mylife. You just go to the forum where you can submit questions, comments, as well as request materials like this letter. Okay. With that, let us move to another question. Should I be concerned over an anonymous letter, chain letter I received? So the person writes, I received an ominous chain letter threatening me with various curses if I do not continue sending out the chain letters to my friends and associates. Should I be concerned over this? So there's sometimes we rely on extrapolating an answer from the Rebbe, or based on a different answer, or the spirit of the Rebbe's approach. Here, thank God, we actually have something directly from the Rebbe. It was in the year Tavshin Mem Vov, and it was a Sicha Zayin Cheshvan. And the Rebbe spoke exactly about this. He spoke that he received a letter from a woman, instructing her to send a chain letter to 10 people, and if she doesn't do that, her life will be affected adversely. Terrified, she wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told her and said at the Fabrengen to completely ignore it. It has no effect. You always think good, and it shouldn't have any, not even a smidgen, not even an iota of any negative reactions to it. Which, of course, is consistent with the Rebbe's approach. In general, we spoke about this by an Ayin Hara in episode 99, that we control our destiny. Obviously, there are predispositions, different times of the year that have their own challenges, but nothing controls, and we should not be given to any type of terror or fears of these type of ominous letters. But then the Rebbe continued, Zayin Cheshvan, and this is a classic Rebbe, just like there is no such thing as just a negative, don't be afraid. The Rebbe said, and I'm paraphrasing, and that's Sicha Zayin Cheshvan Mem Vov, that's 33 years ago, that everything is Ashgacha Pratis. The fact that the woman turned to the Rebbe, and that meant that the Rebbe was meant to hear about this type of idea, this wild thing called chain letters, is because chain letters have a powerful impact, a chain reaction. And therefore, we have to use it and channel it for goodness and godliness. What did the Rebbe suggest then? Something that has been done, but I don't think to the extent it should be done. Maybe this is a good opportunity now that we're suffering tragedies. Though it's not an ominous chain letter, but channeling something positive. What did the Rebbe suggest? That everybody should send out 10 letters to people they know, acquaintances, about the importance of praying for Mashiach and waiting imminently for Mashiach's coming. And informing them to please forward it to another 10 people. In other words, to create a positive chain reaction, a positive ripple effect of this chain letter. So besides the fact not to be afraid of it, there was not just enough defense. We go on the offense. We take a lesson from this, that this is a great opportunity to use it for the good. Today, the Rebbe didn't say this, of course, then it didn't exist. But today, I'm adding, you can do this even easier through email, through social media, through whatever platforms, WhatsApps, whatever other tools and instruments and platforms that you have. And now we have even more powerful viral power, even then, which was just physical letters. So we have a lesson from the Rebbe. Firstly, these things shouldn't affect anybody. On the contrary, use it as a lesson to send out letters in the positive way and encourage people to do the same, a positive ripple effect that can literally transform the world. So maybe now is the opportunity for those that never heard this directive from the Rebbe. Now you heard it, to do it. And maybe this can be turned into a whole campaign. I could see this becoming a whole institution, organization, but let's not bureaucratize it, but rather institution, meaning something that can be, people can invest in and really turn it into something reaching millions of people. And all the while fulfilling the Rebbe's directive 33 years ago, Zayin Cheshvan. Okay, let's go on to the next comment and questions. Are there guidelines for using hypnosis to treat mental health? Hi, Reb Simon. Please share any reference or just the answer to this question. What are the guidelines for using hypnosis for mental health? The only thing I have found is a letter from the Rebbe dated 21st of Adar Beis, Adar Sheni, 5738, Tov Shalamet Ches. Here is the excerpt from the letter. I would like to make a further point, though entirely not in my domain, the Rebbe writes, namely, in reference to hypnosis as one of the techniques used in psychotherapy, as mentioned in your letter, I have always been wary of any method that deprives a person of the free exercise of his will and which puts him in the power of another person, even temporarily, except, of course, in the case of a life-threatening situation, pikuach nefesh. So I looked around and did not find yet other references to hypnosis. I recall a sikha that Rebbe did mention it, but I still have to find it, and I will, when I do, I will share with you when I find it. But I wanted to especially throw this out there, because if somebody does have a letter, an answer, a reference, a sikha, or anything that you know, please, because for the benefit of others, it's a topic that people deal with and have to address. But I believe this directive is the spirit of what the Rebbe would say, as it has said many times in different areas and different arenas, that exactly that. Hypnosis, if it's pikuach nefesh, life-threatening, it's a whole different story. But to use it, the question has to be done with care. The Rebbe doesn't completely preclude it. He says he's wary of a method that deprives a person of control. So people talk about overeating and obesity. Hypnosis is used. It's used in other areas of psychotherapy. So I don't want to come to any conclusive statement about it until we see more material from the Rebbe. What I read, I read. And as you know, I never come to conclusions here anyway. You should talk to your local mashpia, Rav, and a trusted person who knows Yedidim Mevinim, who knows the Rebbe's approach, the Torah approach, and it has to be addressed case by case, because there's definitely areas that it may be possible to be done, even if it's not Pikuach Nefesh. Though this letter clearly almost rejects it entirely, but if I recall correctly, there are some exceptions. But again, we know the Rebbe's answer. Now, applying it, you have to take each situation, and again, I request if anybody has any more material from the Rebbe on this, please share it for the benefit, l'tayelas harabim, for the benefit of the public and for everyone listening to these programs. Okay, next question. And these questions are not necessarily connected. I'm taking them and sometimes in the order as they come in, and they each has their own personality. But I want just a good opportunity to mention all questions will be addressed. If not immediately, with time, because there is a backup, But I'm getting there, and I feel very happy to report that many of the questions that some of you have sent again, I've already addressed. And so please don't give up on me. And know that I will address all the questions. They're organized by us. Sometimes I bunch them together if they're a similar topic. So the next question is the world to come. Will we be able to have children in the world to come? Okay. The truth is, I don't know what the spirit and the meaning behind this question is. So I'm going to answer it on face value. But I know that usually questions indicate on something more going on. But this could just be curiosity. So first of all, this is a pasuk, a beferish pasuk in Torah, Hare v'yoled yolde yachdav, and the Gemara learns from it that Asida in the future, which is the world to come, we're talking here the world to come, Mashiach's times in Elam Haba, not Gan Eden, where there's no birth, in a literal physical sense, is what it says, Asida isha shetel b'chol yem. So the Gemara learns it from this verse, in Shabbos Daf Lamed, I believe, that in the future a woman will give birth every day. There's plenty of commentaries that ask what that means. The Rebbe himself has addressed it, because in Ageres HaKedesh Siman Chavov, which is Epistle 26, the Alter Rebbe cites it as well, with some of the Alter Rebbe's interpretation. But it says it, so that's number one. That not only will we be able to, we will, and even more so, there'll be even less resistance, as the Tzemach Tzedek brings from the Arizal, that it will take instead of 9 months, it'll take 9 hours to give birth, from conception to birth, in the same day. So the answer is absolutely yes. Now, we're talking about the future. There'll be what's called Chad Charuv. There'll be a Tkufa, a stage where the entire existence will be transformed. Then everything is going to be different, and that's not in the scope of our discussion here. But if you're asking in the future, yes, absolutely. And it'll be, some people explain, it'll be Nun Neshamas, souls that have never been here before, because Mashiach will come, Ein Ben David Ba Ad Sheyichluk Neshama Shebeguf, Kol Neshama Shebeguf. The Mashiach itself is dependent on all the souls that have never been to earth should be down here in this world, or the ones that have to come in another Gilgal, reincarnation. But then there'll be new neshamas and another stage of neshamas. There's many places in Chassidus, or a number of places in Chassidus that this is discussed. In Biyuri Azer from the Tzemach Tzedek, Volume 2, there's a mimer on this topic, Ginso it's called, and you can look it up there. Okay, next question. Now, because I don't know the background behind this, I can't go further than this. I will just say there's always a lesson in this. The lesson is that the Tachlis HaKavanah, the ultimate purpose, is that a neshama should come down into this world, into a body. So, of course, if that's the case today, before we have the Gula, for sure when the Gula will be here, they'll have the complete fusion of physical and physical and spiritual, where the souls will continue to come down. And then for sure, a yichud, the unity, a sacred unity between husband and wife, father, will bear fruit, which is basically a recreation of Koyach HaElod, the Koyach Ein Sof, the creating of something in this world. So if it's happening now, for sure it will happen then. One more point I wanted to make. Okay, next question. Yeshiva shlichus. When a yeshiva sends bochrim as talmidim shluchim, as emissaries, so yeshiva sends shluchim to other yeshivas, and the anhola, the faculty, decides where the bochrim are going and with whom. So the faculty of each yeshiva that does is they decide who's going and where they're going and who else is in the group. Is the place that you're being sent to, does it have a special meaning as the place that the Rebbe sent you? In other words, is it considered as the Rebbe sending you on the shlichus? And that's where you should go? Or should we consider this as a decision of a group of people of the faculty that could perhaps make a mistake and lav davka? That's the right place for you. Let's say if you feel that it doesn't fit you. Thank you very much. I really enjoy listening to your lessons. It's a very good question. This question was asked, I remember my days in yeshiva, and today for sure I'm sure it's asked. Because at the end of the day, it was the faculty that chose actual Talmidim. They gave it into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was maskim. But some people thought that the Rebbe himself handpicked, not necessarily. However, because the Rebbe gave the shlichus to the Anhola to do this, and he called them shluchim, and in many cases and instances, the Rebbe actually gave dollars or mincha ma'ariv or a Tanya or other things to these Talmidim, and sometimes to their parents, and stoka, $1, and so on, so then it's essentially shliach es a shliach. And al pi halacha, as the Rebbe says many times, a shliach who makes a shliach, so the shluchim, the Talmidim, even though the shliach to make them is the faculty of the yeshiva, but they're shluchim of the Rebbe, so the shlichus goes back to the Rebbe. It's not buffered by them. Like in the halacha, if somebody makes a shliach, sends a emissary to go bring kiddushin, a marriage contract to a potential wife, and he doesn't go himself, he sends a shliach. Who is the wife married to? Not to the shliach, to the man that sent the shliach. And you could do shliach as a shliach ad mei shluchim or more. That means it's a constant process that the shliach essentially, I don't say power of attorney, but essentially extends that power of shlichus. It reminds me of a story of a chassid who once wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe a question, and the Rebbe told him, "Katsas yedidim mevinim," like the advice of friends who understand, who are experts. And he told the Rebbe, "I want the Rebbe's advice. I don't want yedidim mevinim." And the Rebbe said, "Vos ardir as enfren durch the yedidim mevinim." Why do you mind that I will give you an answer through your friends who are experts? So there's many ways that Rebbe can make a shliach. It can be directly, and it can be, not indirectly, but through another shliach. Habe shluchim l'mokim, the Eibishter sends many shluchim in different ways. So in that sense, I would say that yes, there is an element of that shliach es a shliach. Now, can human beings who have free will make a mistake? Of course they can make a mistake. They can make a miscalculation. But that's already something that needs to be verbringed about. Can the faculty who sends someone, and let's say you feel you don't fit in, on one hand you can argue that since you're there as a shliach of the faculty who's a shliach of the Rebbe, maybe you do fit in. Maybe that's your challenge to figure out how to fit in. Maybe the challenge is that it shouldn't come easy. Or you could say that maybe there's some element of bchira, and maybe, not to say mistake, but maybe with discussion, and we have to use our seichel even when we're given a shlichus of the Rebbe wants us also to use our intelligence to see what's the best way to do it. So I'm sure that can also be another option I'm not sure I should say, that there's two options how you can discuss it. That already is open to Fabrengens. I'm not going to rule on that. I'm just putting it on the table that both possibilities are there, but it's definitely the element of shliach is a shliach. Now, faculty, some people say the faculty in the school they're not worthy of being faculty. So there you can ask the question, so maybe if they're not faculty, are they really shluchim of the Rebbe? That's a whole other discussion. Again, bchira, of course, a teacher or faculty, even if they are supposed to be shluchim of the Rebbe, but a shlich of the Rebbe could also, unfortunately, be moyel b'shlichusei. He can do things that are not consistent with the shlichus. But that's already, I believe, another discussion, not necessarily within the scope of this question. Definitely a worthy question to talk about. I must have talked about this in the past, but and I will talk about it if it comes up again. But that's, as I said, going off a little more on a tangent. Next question. What boundaries should be kept when single girls have male teachers? Okay. Hi, Rabbi Jacobson. This is a question I believe many people have and have trouble articulating. I certainly do. A friend and I were speaking today, and we both had the experience of searching for answers to life questions, and then finally finding someone, a rabbi, a man, who seemed to get it, and then feeling confused as to how close is too close for a girl to become to a man who's not her husband. Physical contact is pretty clear-cut. You just don't do it. But emotional contact is harder to define, and it seems to be a pretty common confusion in seminaries where very single girls often have classes and farbrengens with male teachers. Are there specific clear-cut emotional boundaries we should be keeping? At what point does the spiritual or emotional connection that develops when discussing the deeper aspects of life with someone become inappropriate? And what should be done when this is the case? Okay. As I always say, we address every question. This is a real question with real challenges and unfortunately situations that did become inappropriate. So I did discuss the topic indirectly and indirectly in episodes 33, 104, and 105. But being that this question is so direct, let me address it. So first of all, A few points. Point number one. This is someone's writing. The writer here is a student. A student should definitely have her boundaries, but above all, her faculty should have boundaries. Because they're the adults, they're the teachers, they're the educators, they're the ones that are setting and teaching standards. So I'm not taking away from your responsibility as a writer, but I want to make that point very clear. That the first boundaries have to be created by the people who are the authorities. In this case, the male teachers or the male faculty. Point number one. Point number two, we have a Torah for this. The Torah is called Hilchos Yichud. Hilchos Yichud are laws that are very broad laws that address the issue of inappropriate behavior, but creating boundaries before there's even inappropriate behavior, not even to come to it. Nobody is absolved. Nobody is above the law, and everybody has to follow these laws. Faculties, every faculty, male and female. And if there's a suffix, if there's a doubt, it's always good to be l'chumra and these type of things because of the risks involved. And yes, emotional intimacy can be sometimes even stronger than physical because you become dependent, you become connected, and it affects everybody. And people can be seduced by the mere fact that they have that type of influence. So the boundaries are even stronger when dealing with student and teacher. That's point number two. Point number three is that not only should this be addressed, but it has to be done in a very blatant way. Not to wait till something happens and wait till there's some type of confusion. It should be clear that everybody's comfortable. Any student, any girl, any boy for that matter. Speaking to a teacher, a male, in this case a woman, speaking to a man, should not have to even think about this. It should be done in such an appropriate way, l'chatchila, l'fnimisur sadin, Chassidic way, that the issue shouldn't even come up. You don't have to wait till it gets to a point where you start saying, what do we do now? And that's why the Hilchos Yichud are literally gdorim. They are like walls you put up. They doesn't allow to come to situations. How long a conversation should be, when that conversation is happening. Is it in the presence of other people? This type of one-on-one, intimate hashpah should be done woman to woman, man to man. That's my next point. In rare instances where the man is whatever, a woman, a student comes over to a teacher who's male, let him answer briefly, but direct her to appropriate mashpia with a hey, meaning someone who is female. So that way you avoid all these issues. If the man has wisdom, and his wife is, let's say, his partner, let his wife be the mashpia, and let her consult with him, with the husband, and he can give his advice through her. Doesn't have to be directly with the student. From the point of view of the student, you can demand this. I don't say you have to demand it in a chutzpahdik way or make any accusations, but you could say, I want to speak to you, but I really want to make sure that this is done in a proper halachic Chassidic way. Any male teacher is going to immediately say, of course, and you talk about those guidelines. If you don't see it coming from the faculty and the teachers where it should come from, as I mentioned, then there's nothing wrong with you pointing it out in a very direct way. But again, not with accusations, in a very nice, edel way. What's comfortable? Like, who says there should be two people, a male teacher and a female student should be sitting alone altogether? Maybe it should always be in the presence of his wife or in presence of a female person. As I said, it should be minimal as it is. But even when it's necessary, you just build in these things so you avoid the nisyonos, the tests, the challenges, and the forces that we don't always know that get unleashed when people communicate on a personal level. That's my response. And I don't have a black and white formula in each particular case, but this is pretty much straightforward and always best to err on the side of caution and to avoid situations in the first place. Okay. Now we're going to do some follow-up, quite a few follow-ups, so I reserved some time to be able to cover as many as I can. I'll start, first of all, a small correction, a slip of the tongue last week when I was speaking about male, female. So I spoke about v'yenuchu ba, v'yenuchu boy, v'yenuchu bam, the three different expressions we say Friday night, Shabbos day, Shabbos, and Shal Shudas by Mincha. I reversed it and I said Friday night we say v'yenuchu boy in the masculine. That was incorrect. It's v'yenuchu ba Friday night, Shabbos day is V'yinuchu boy, which is masculine, and V'yinuchu bam is both together, in them. Correction. Now, in episodes 243, 244, we spoke about mental health referrals, people asking for referrals for mental health professionals. So here was a follow-up to that. Hi, Rabbi Jacobson. I'm a bit behind, so perhaps this has already been mentioned. Regarding a homeopathic doctor for depression, I would encourage the writer to first have a full workup of blood tests to check for possible deficiencies in iron, vitamin B, vitamin D, calcium, etc. Very often, even borderline deficiencies in vitamins and minerals can contribute to depression and are easily resolved by taking the proper supplements. Okay? Thank you for weighing in. I just want to say about homeopathy and chiropractic and other things I will be discussing in a future episode, about alternative medicine and so on. As far as referrals goes, listen, we do not medicate ourselves and we do not treat ourselves. I'm not talking about basic things that you can do in your own diet and hygiene, especially by advice of a doctor. So I'm always wary when people have too many homemade remedies, again, except in simple situations, drinking chicken soup, if you have a sore throat, talking about myself, and so on. We're not discussing that. So it's always good to have a competent doctor. Okay, we'll talk about, as I said, alternative medicine another time. Another, in episode 245, we also spoke about the difference in nursing versus bottle feeding. So if you haven't heard these episodes, you can always go back to listen to them. So see this as a follow-up. This is like some footnotes or some additional addendums that fill the topic, to complete the topic. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, I'm just catching up on the past few episodes. I wanted to comment as a certified lactation counselor on the breastfeeding versus bottle feeding question. Given that I'm a lactation counselor, what I'm going to say is going to be quite counterintuitive. The benefits of breastfeeding in a first world society such as ours have been massively exaggerated and sensationalized. The science supposedly proving the massive benefits of breastfeeding and the risks of formula is flimsy at best, and there are plenty of studies that conclude the opposite. Baruch Hashem, we have access to many kinds of formula, clean water to prepare it with, and quality health care in our country. Developmentally, your baby needs a mommy who is feeling happy, calm, and present, infinitely more than they need breast milk. So if you're unable to produce enough milk or breastfeeding is interfering with your mental or emotional health, know that it is Ashgacha Pratis, divine providence, and that formula is a gift from Hashem, and use it with simcha. For more information or support, please check out the Fed is Best Foundation online. Okay, thank you for that. As I said, I always welcome comments. I really want this to be a public forum in the fullest sense of the word, so we can cover something from many different perspectives. I present what I have available to me, the things I'm aware of, but there's always more, so thank you for that. Next follow-up. This was about, can anyone publish the Rebbe's talks? So we were discussing this last week and 2 weeks ago, and as I always want to present something in a balanced way, so I've talked about different aspects of it. I did make reference to a letter from the Frierdiker Rebbe, but apparently it's important to emphasize even more, and I'm going to do that now. And here's the question that's on rise. Dear Rabbi Jacobson, I greatly admire all that you are doing on this channel, and it is really amazing. However, on the topic of publishing the Rebbe's talks, I do not see how you can diminish the letter published by the Rebbe and mentioned by the Rebbe many times to many people who asked that all the original texts of the talks, letters, and writings of the Rabbeim are only to be published with permission of Kahos. Kahos is Kahanei Hayotera, an institution the Frierdiker Rebbe established in the early 40s and appointed the Rebbe to be head of it, the publishing arm of Chabad Lubavitch. I'm just explaining what it is. The letter continues to me. We can discuss and analyze whether this applies to videos or pictures or essays or adaptions. However, regarding the original text in Sfarim, it seems quite clear that the Rebbe gave it over fully to Kahos, and that no one has a right to publish it without their permission. See an original copy of this letter published by the Rebbe in Sefer Mamorim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, 5711, page 286. Well, I'm not sure if you heard me, but I did actually cite this letter and acknowledged it, not only acknowledged it, but as I said, I read all letters, so let me continue one more paragraph. You seem to mention this letter and even say, okay, thank you, Didn't realize you acknowledged that. You seem to mention this letter and even say that any author can obviously give over or limit the rights of their content. However, in your general approach, you consistently generalize and state several times that the Rebbe's words and talks are not copyright, and you do not distinguish between the original Sfarim of Chassidus versus people's adaptions or thoughts of the Rebbe's wisdom, and instead just suggest that Abonim or Mashpiyim should get together to see how quality control should be implemented when the Rebbe clearly said how that should be done regarding the Sfarim and original texts. If you can please clarify how your approach is in line with this letter, or if you truly were not talking about all the original Sichos, Igros, and Chassidus of our dear Rebbe. Thank you. Okay. And then a letter came in addressing the letter of the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe's, which I'll talk about in a moment. I'll actually read that letter that asked the following question. In listening closely to your last two episodes where you spoke about this topic, I saw that you were going back and forth regarding, on one hand, that the Rebbeim is Torah, just like Moshe Rabbeinu is Torah, and that's not copyrightable. On the other hand, there is both Kahos, and you also cited what the Rebbe in Tov Shem Mem Daled, citing what the Alter Rebbe wrote in the beginning of the introduction, in the publisher's forward to Tanya, that you have to respect the rights of the publisher. And the Rebbe re-emphasized that in Tov Shem Mem Daled when he spoke the mitzvah of printing Tanyas everywhere. And I saw that you did not come to anything conclusive, and you kept on weighing the two. I'm not sure why, but I was wondering, is it possible that, and this may be controversial, is it possible that yes, Kahos was established by the Frierdiker Rebbe, he wrote the letter which he wrote, the Rebbe, of course, reinforced it a number of times, and yet, today, since the Rebbe is not here physically, the people running Kahos, who says that they are always making the correct decisions? When the Rebbe was running Kahos, we could rest assured that he is making the correct decision. So when does Kahos perhaps can ultimately turn into somewhat of a bureaucracy that has perhaps its own personal agendas that are not necessarily consistent with the spirit of the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe? Okay, so here we have it. Two different perspectives. So I think the best thing is let's go straight to the letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe is dated, and I will read it. I'll translate it. It's dated Yudalet Kislev, interestingly, Tovshin Ches. That's 1947, because Yudalet Kislev would probably be in December of 47. So I'm not going to read every word. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes that I heard a shmua, a rumor, that some of our Nash and students are printing Svarim in Nigla and Chassidus that are related, are Mishtayachim, which means that belong to or connected with the Nesiach Chabad, without receiving first Rishus, permission. So here I hereby notifying them that printing of Svarim of Nigla and Dach, Nigla and Chassidus, was given al Yad HaMesed Leitzar Svarim, was given to the organization called the Publishing House of Kahos Karnei HaTorah. And I hereby request that every one of our Nash and students should help the organization of Kahos in their holy work, to speak with them first, with the Mesed of Kahos, the way they could be helped and supported, and Hashem will be matzliach them, begashmis beruchnis. And without this organization of Kahos, not one person should print any one of these Svarim mentioned above. And those that listen to me will be blessed, bereiv tev, with much good, materially and spiritually. In a footnote, which probably the Rebbe wrote, it says, since different people are coming with questions to us about getting permission to print Svarim that have a relation to the Rebbeim of Chabad, so here we're printing a copy of the letter of the Frierdiker Rebbe that should resolve this question. Now, this was published in a Kuntus by the Rebbe of Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz Tov Shin Yud Aleph. Yeah, it's actually the date is Gimel Tammuz Tov Shin Yud Aleph. So this was the questions that the Rebbe said. Since questions are coming in, we're printing this letter. Okay, the letter. That's the letter. I'll also cite one place in the Sikha called Shabbos Pasha Vayakel Tov Shin Yud Daled. That would be 1954. Actually, Mevarch Machodesh Adar Sheni. So the Rebbe also spoke about this. He recites this letter, which is, by the way, printed also in Igros Kodesh now, in the Frierdiker Rebbe's Igros Kodesh, volume 9, bottom of page 356. And it says there's a letter, and he quotes exactly the letter, and even sharper, that no one should print without permission. The world is not a Reshus Harabim, it's not a public entity. There's a Reshus Yod, there's a Balabos. And even if their kavanah is a good one, so till now, they did what they did. But from here on, with all their questions and answers, they'll say, we need to print it, it's the Teil Sarabim. The Rebbe says, I'm not interested in all the questions. The Satman needs all these questions. The Rebbe gave his directive, and we don't have to do his job for him. Now, clearly, the Rebbe, of course, was running Kahos, and therefore, everything was being done and published by the Rebbe. So the Rebbe makes it clear in the Sikha, he recites that letter. Now, yes, there is a question. There's no question, let me clarify. There's no question that this letter is this letter. It stands. No one can change this letter. It's exactly what it says. You could argue, discuss, what is the reason for this? Was it just a Gzeirus HaKosav Azeh the Rebbe Gewalt? Is it because of quality control and financial reasons, meaning investment is being done? Or is there some holier thing in it? The question that could be posed, what about Teda, the fact Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have a kohos, didn't have a publishing organization. And yet, however, we have something that maybe is similar. You can say the actual writing of a Sefer Teda, not everybody can go write a Sefer Teda. There's Hilchas Stam, there's Hilchas Stam, how you write a Sefer Teda, who can write it, under what conditions, with all the proper necessity. And the Moshe Rabbeinu himself wrote 13 Sifrei Teda to make sure there could be no ziyufim, no forgeries. And the whole process involved in that. And until this day, Sifrei Teda are written with that type of quality control. That's why they remain intact. Is that connected to this? And not? I am not going to come at any conclusive. I'm putting the things on the table here. If anybody has interest in printing a maimer, a sikhe, especially in the original from the Rabbeim, so you have the Hira. No matter how you explain it, the lesson, the Hira is there. So this program here is not coming, God forbid, in any way to question that. But if you put it in the context, is the Rebbe's Teira belongs to any company? Does it belong to any entity? Of course not. Teira is Teira. But the publishing of this Teira in a book form, in individual kuntres form, there clearly the Rebbe wanted it a certain way. Someone goes and travels and says, I'm going to chazer a maimer, do they have to call Kahos for permission? Obviously not. If someone's life was changed by the Rebbe's Teira, they disseminated in many different ways. Again, not through publishing. This is clearly a publishing story. And again, you can explain different reasons, quality control, the other reasons. As far as the question that you asked about Kahos, the second question, which is, what happens if the Kahos faculty is not always perfect? Well, no human being is perfect. It's true. No one comes to the Rebbe, and I don't think that the faculty of Kahos is going to say they are like the Rebbe. They'll say, however, someone has to control what the Rebbe wanted Kahos to be, and they're doing their best. Hopefully they have a faculty where they have Shur B'Rev Yeitz. It's not Dan Yechidi. It's not one person. And if they have a staff, and I would hope that if somebody appeals to them and says, I think I have a taina to you, I have a complaint, that they would treat it with respect in the proper Teredik way, and not just say, hey, we're the authority and we're not subject to any accountability. That's what I would hope. I think that's the approach, and there's a Teira. Teira regulates everything. No one would have challenged the Rebbe, obviously, because the Rebbe was, in this case, impeccable, and no one would have discussed it. But if somebody has an issue, by all means, address it. Write a letter, bring it up. Everybody has an accountability. But at the same time, Kahos is amazed that the Rebbe did, the Frierdiker Rebbe established. He gave what I just read stands. It's a letter that stands just at any part of the Rebbeim's Hairah. And I think that fills in all the angles. And by all means, if someone still has comments or questions, feel free to respond and comment and so on. Okay. There's a few more follow-ups that I want to address. Next follow-up is not listening to the Rebbe. In episode 247, we spoke about what people don't listen to the Rebbe's directive about drinking l'chaim, not more than four small cups. So there was no real comments except about people writing, how about some articles on what the Rebbe has told us about our community? There's a lot that's not being upheld. In other words, there's other things we don't listen. How do we accept any other issues that the Rebbe advised and people don't listen? Look what they're doing to real estate and what the Rebbe said and more. Why don't you ask why isn't every chassid mizbeinin and inyan chassidus before davening? Okay, so there's a list of things here that we're not perfect in. I don't think that you can just put them all in one pot, and two wrongs don't make a right. I was discussing, as the questioner asked, the issue of drinking l'chaim, which is a direct directive of the Rebbe, and frankly, something that shouldn't be that difficult to keep. Other things, obviously, we all want to fulfill the Rebbe's directives. So, but some people wrote this, and I just wanted to share that as well. One more follow-up I'll do. I'm always running behind in the follow-ups. What can I say? Okay. Well, about abortion. Follow-up regarding abortion, episode 247. So one question I didn't fully answer was, lately there have been a few articles about the Torah view on abortion and its differences with Christianity. Do you know if the Rebbe addressed the sensitive topic? Thank you. Are non-Jews allowed to have an abortion? And how does Chassidus explain the prohibition of abortion? Thanks. And there's more questions on this topic. I'm going to have to split it and just address one or two. So first of all, since this is not a halachic forum, I hesitate, and I'm rude to enter that domain. There are plenty of laws regarding abortion, and you really have to talk to a competent Rav, knowing all the particular situation to address it. I'm sticking more to the hashkafa, but since the question is being asked and it overlaps a bit, I will refer you, if you know my book, Torah Meaning for Life, on the chapter on birth. So I talk about the sanctity of life, obviously, from the Rebbe's Sichos. And in the footnotes in the back, there's reference on birth, cite the Gemara in Oyelis, Zayin Vov 7:6, and Sanhedrin 72b, Rashi's commentary, Nachmanides, Ramban, on the Gemara in Shabbos 107b, and Nida 44b, Meiri on Shabbos 107b, and Sanhedrin 72b. Where it discusses more this idea, because the question is not just one that people make the mistake, it's purely murder. Because the fact is, if the fetus is a danger to the mother, you save the mother's life. You can't murder someone to save someone else's life. Because uber yerechime. But that doesn't take away from the element of abortion of being touching, even tampering with in any way, even tattooing, or definitely mutilating a person's own body. So even if it's not a fully viable fetus, but it's part of the mother, there are prohibitions. You can't just discuss it as a life, discuss it as a part of a life. And where the one that already has a spirit beginning to grow within it. So this topic, as I said, is a very complex one and a subtle one. The laws regarding Jews, regarding non-Jews. Here's not the place to go into it. I just wanted to make some sources here and refer you to the proper authorities on this type of topic. As far as Chassidus' explanation, it's not just Chassidus. Chassidus adds to it, but it's the sanctity of life. When a child is conceived, it's not just an accident. God made a decision that a husband and a wife in sanctity are conceiving a child. They're two partners. The third partner, God, chose to put a soul into that child. Yes, at this point, until birth, it's not a full life. It's still part of the mother's life, but God made a choice. We don't tamper with that. So you're really dealing with the issues of sanctity of life itself, sanctity of a new soul developing with a new body. That's the short of it. Now, there's more that came in on this topic, but I'm going to have to cut it short because of time. I wanted to now go to the Chassidus question, which is a follow-up to last week's, which I never finished, the letter of the Rebbe, a fascinating letter. The discussion was connected to this week's Parshas on the building of the Mishkan. So according to the Ramban, what's the Iker Chayfetz, what's the Iker Keli, the Iker service in the Mishkan, the primary service, was the Aron HaKodesh, the Holy Ark, Aron HaBris, in the Holy of Holies. That's where the Luchos were, and that's the Holy of Holies that only the Chayin Gadol went in once a year for a short while in Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says about this that there was a miracle there. The space of the ark was not part of the measurement, which meant that if you measured wall to wall as if the ark was not there, would be the same thing even if you counted the ark. So though the ark occupied space and measured space, the Torah says so, yet even with the ark sitting there and you measured, it's as if it was not there. It's like it was invisible. Usually you'd measure here, and you'd minus the cubits that the ark is. So there's this miracle of space and non-space coming together. So we addressed last week a letter from the Rebbe. This is printed in Likutei Sichos, volume 11, page 319, where the Rebbe negates the idea that you can use this to explain and reconcile the unity of God with the existence of the world. And we discussed that. But then the Rebbe says, now, in Chassidus, this idea of Mokem Aron Eina Min Amida is brought as a proof in understanding the different ways existence relates to above existence, beyond existence, godliness. And the Rebbe says there are three ways this can be understood. And you could say it's Das Tachten, Das Elyon, and that which is above both of them. Now, Das Tachten is the perspective from existence, our perspective. Das Elyon is the perspective from the divine looking at existence. And the one that's higher is one that's beyond both perspectives. A perspective that's beyond existence and beyond existence. And the Rebbe says like this. The first perspective is, and we look at it, the Aron, the ark, gives us these perspectives. One perspective is that you measure the ark and you find it to be a Masayim v'chetzi, 2.5 cubits length, and all the details in its measurement, not more and not less. That's the exact measurement as the Torah Parshat Truma says the ark should be, length, width, depth, and so on. And that's how it is in truth, according to the Torah, complete truth. It's not partial truth, it's accurate, absolutely. For us, this is how the Torah says you should make it. And we see b'muchash that was its size. But while you're measuring it and measuring the size of the ark, you know, not b'muchash, not that you see this, you know that if afterwards you're going to measure the Holy of Holies, you'll find Esadam is 10 cubits in all directions, as if the ark does not occupy space. What is this an example for? Das Tachten, that how the existence, there's an existence, and nevertheless it's bottled, it's sublimated to godliness. This is called Yechuda Tata. Something exists, but it's sublimated. And this is an example to tell us. You see existence, it's measurable, but you know that there's a concept that something is beyond the measure of space here. So this is the perspective of the divine Yechuda Tata. The Rebbe says, Unit das is der Uftu from the minion from Mokem Aron Eina Min Amida. This is not the real Chiddush. They're not the real innovation of this concept. Second approach, which is Das Elyon from above, Yechudi Allah, you'll measure the Holy of Holies and you'll find 10 cubits in every direction. B'muchash. You actually see that there's nothing occupies any space here. But you know in your mind that if you afterwards are going to measure the Aron in the ark, you'll find that it does occupy space. So you see b'muchash with your own perspective from above, you see higher than space. Even though you know that there's a concept called space. So from the bird's eye view, you know there's space, but you don't experience space. You experience that which is beyond space. From this is a dugma, ech shemokem atzme in v'mitzias. This gives us an example how space itself does not occupy, is not really relevant, so to speak. Yechudi Allah. And then the third approach is kishatei shnei inyanim. You look at both things at once. The measuring of the ark, the measuring of the Holy of Holies. At the same time, both are b'muchash. You see them both in front of your eyes. That means the mitzias of two measurements, they're both equally valid and equally powerful and intense before you. And the Rebbe says, das is the ruftu for Mokem Aron Eina Min Amida. This is the chiddush. Then the Rebbe continues that the difference is not how you want to measure it. It's more of a difference in the tchuna, the personality of the person who's contemplating on godliness and his upleg, his perspective. What resonates more by him, and what is more of a innovation. So based on a person's perspective, if space is what really we relate to more, or beyond space, that would be first way and the second way, or the third way is the ultimate, understanding space and non-space together. You can look up the letter. The application, of course, is that the ultimate goal is that in the space of existence, we should experience beyond space. Or to put it in more poetic words, we should learn to express the inexpressible. It's not enough just to go transcend space and time. We do it in space and time, in Shabbos, in the weekdays of time, in the space where we live, in Dira B'Tachtenim, that we should experience that which is beyond space. But there are 3 stages in doing so. You begin first from your perspective, you see space, but don't worship it. You recognize there are things that are beyond space. In a simple way, you realize that a table takes up space, but how about a brain and ideas? You realize 1 second. Space, conceptual space is very different. Then you come to realize the space of the Aron, of the Holy of Holies, another level. But that's still an innovation. Then you come to realize that really non-space, beyond space is reality, and space is the novelty. Alakus b'pshitus and elam is b'eschatshus. That the existence is a novelty and godliness is reality, which is beyond space and time. Then you come to realize a fusion of the two. And these are really 3 levels in our comprehension and our growth, and of course have personal application of how we don't take this world that seriously, even though we need to bring godliness into it, but don't worship it, because everything in this existence is meant to really be a channel for that which is beyond existence, to the point where beyond existence and existence join as one. Okay, we'll do now the 3 essays. This is still essays from last year's contest. Understanding and Dealing with Events, Chana Spiegel, age 36, Jerusalem, Israel, Akeres Habayis. She runs a home. She's the foundation of a home. It's in Hebrew, and she basically takes that when you look into a newspaper, you see the events of the life of the world, you see this whole randomness and all the different challenges of life. So when you look at the events can be very fragmented, but it's time to change ourselves. She goes on to say how God gave us the strength, and Chassidus gives us tools, especially in this high-tech world, to not allow ourselves to become overwhelmed by the events of the world, but to learn to control them and understand them from a deeper perspective. And brings all kinds of different sources in doing this. Well done essay in Hebrew. Just looking if there's a summary here. Yeah. And that allows us to deal with all the challenges of life in a new way. That's essay number 1. Thank you, very well done. Next essay, Chassidus Lessons from Physical Therapy, Yecheskel Shimon Gutfreund, age 62, Brighton, Massachusetts, Draper Laboratory research scientist. He says there's a bit of interesting history to this essay. A few months ago I had an injury and had to go to a physical therapist, and describes that whole therapy went through, and the lessons he's learned from Chassidus from this physical therapy is what he goes on. About little specific things, very well done. About it's not rejection, it's divine redirection. Regaining your spiritual health can be done on cruise control. Real growth requires some pain and effort. Trigger points are not just physical, they are spiritual. And goes on to explain different aspects of the physical theory and how they teach us lessons of Chassidus. Again, a very interesting and creative essay. And I commend you for that. I highly recommend reading it. And finally, the 3rd essay is Letting Go with Love, Resolving the Paradox of Avos Yisrael, Shasha Balovsky, age 29, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Job is speech-language pathologist at Nyman Associates. She writes, your close friendship has soured into a tit-for-tat bursts of fury and verbal abuse. Your romantic relationship has faltered as you realize your partner holds fundamentally different values. One of the greatest challenges everyone faces in life is that of the broken heart. Chassidus leads us to the resolution by first answering 3 fundamental questions. To the resolution of the questions, how do you move on? How do you grow through this? And the 3 fundamental questions, what is the connection one Jew has to another? What is the purpose of the broken heart? And what is true Avos Yisrael? And then she goes on to answer these 3 questions, the interconnected existence of the Jewish bond, the broken heart and God's gift of epiphany, taking Avos Yisrael to the next level. Okay? A very good essay, I must say. And then with a practical guide to distanced love, she puts it, with a whole list of bullets. So these essays, all well worth reading, very different perspectives, can all be found and seen as they're posted now week by week at meaningfullife.com/essays or /contest, where you can find all the essays. I think that's the correct one. And you can also get them if you subscribe to our emails. We send out and post the new essays as they are posted. I want to remind you again, this Tuesday night is the deadline of this year's essay contest. A $10,000 first prize is waiting for you to be won. Second prize, $3,600. Third prize, $1,000. Fourth prize, for students only, a $500 prize. They're also eligible to the higher prizes. And good luck. Follow the guidelines. Follow the guidelines. Show your essay to someone before you post it, before you submit it. All the information is available. Go to meaningfullife.com/contest. You can submit it in English, in Hebrew, and in Russian, and in Yiddish. Good luck with that. Hatzlacha Rebbe. We should only have simchas and enough pain, and transform the pain into simcha. That we should only have simchas personally, collectively, and the entire world with simchas elam al resham, with the gula amitis vashlema. This has been Chassidus, My Life Chassidus Applied, episode 248. We're here every Sunday, 8 to 9 p.m. Everyone have a very blessed week, a simcha dika week, b'tei v'anira v'anigla, in a very revealed way. Be well.